and just I guess for legal reasons, and I'm telling you, you're being recorded right now. Just real quick, what's your dream copy?
I was going to get started with copywriting. Okay, doing sales letters, email, writing email copy for people. The problem for me is that every time I even tried to do my own website, promoting like a subscription service. At the time, was based upon health and well-being, biohacking.
Mm-hmm.
But I always felt like I was full of shit because I wasn't. I am nowhere near the expert that I should be on these topics. Okay, and that's essentially my problem. See, I don't have a problem with sales in and of itself. I have a problem promoting a product that I don't necessarily. I'm not 100% sold upon. Okay, and with copywriting, you have to take assignments and be the voice of your client. And I fundamentally feel that's kind of like being in many instances, unless I'm really truly believe what the client is saying, that it's bullshit, and it runs contrary to my own belief system. So it's my fundamental problem. There's nothing immoral about the sale, okay, but to me it's immoral when your beliefs don't align with the sale.
Right. Yeah, just to make some money isn't good enough for you.
Yeah, and I think people, and also, let's be honest, okay? The type of direct response copywriting, while I think it's effective, the results speak for themselves with those TV infomercials and everything. It's based upon manipulating the human psychology, okay? It's one of the reasons, too, why I've gotten in over the last few years into talking about propaganda and the manipulation by governments and authorities and the media to move your mind in a certain direction. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. So just briefly, before I moved up here to Oregon, I worked for Intel for quite a long time, and then thought I was going to be safe forever because I survived so many layoffs and stuff.
Yeah, same thing with me with my job.
And lo and behold, the spring of 2016, I got promoted to the next level. I was doing really well. Like my last 10 years there, I got promoted twice. And I was like, this is going to work out well. This is the kind of the last phase of my career. It's going to, I hit that that point in my career where I was really going to start doing well with like stock grants and things like that, bonuses. I was doing well before, but this was going to take me kind of to the next echelon. And then 2 months later, it's like I was in New Mexico just as a reminder, and that plant was. It was uncertain what was going to be the future of that plant, just because it was getting upwards of high 30 or high 30s as far as years it's been there, and they only retool those factories so long before they just shut them down, and it's cheaper to build a brand new one somewhere where they have all the tax incentives and all that stuff. So anyway, they were going through a big kind of cost cutting. They were trying to reduce like global employees, full-time employees by like 10,000 people worldwide. My group got caught up in that whole mess. And like in May or April or May, it was like they called us all into a big giant conference room. A bunch of VPs flew in and gave us the news, and they said, "Hey, there'd be well, actually, let me get past this part." So anyway, I took a retirement from Intel because I had been there long enough, and I got like kind of the full benefits and everything.
Yeah.
We we had a bigger house in Rio Rancho and another place up in the Ski Valley, and we said, you know what, the kids are out of the house. Let's sell this house, go up to the Ski Valley, figure out what we're going to do next. Went up there, worked up there at the Ski Valley for the whole winter, doing some contracting IT work for this new hotel. And I was like, this is going to be great, because if this thing, if I can stay on here and just do this contracting stuff, I'll be living at the Ski Valley, riding my snowboard and working. Hotel finally opened up. That work came to an end. Started applying for a job. I got a job at Sandia National Labs back down in Albuquerque. And if you're not familiar with what they do, it's one of the 3 national nuclear labs in the whole country.
Okay.
It's Los Alamos, Sandia, and Lawrence Livermore.
All right.
And probably don't have to tell you.
I've heard of the other 2. I'd never heard of Sandia.
Yeah. So it's right in Albuquerque. It's in either the Air Force Base, Kirtland Air Force Base down there is an extension of, the labs, or vice versa. But you can drive. If you work there, you pretty much get a pass to get on the base, and half of the majority of the the Sandia National Labs is on the Air Force Base. So if you're not familiar with what they do, they're in the they make weapons, and they that's their their core mission is national security and weapons, and it's a DOE oversight, et cetera, et cetera. And I was just like, I got kids in college, got a family to support. Like, it's the last thing I want to do, but I got to do it until I can figure out what I'm going to do next. So I went down there reluctantly. It worked. Money was good, everything, but I was just like, I felt like the biggest hypocrite being down there working just for for $1. After all this social media posts and criticism of all this stuff, there I am working. I mean, I wasn't supporting designing weapons, but I was working there nonetheless. Contributing to the overall mission. I was just like, I can't do this. I can't do this for moral and all the reasons you were just talking about. Just to make $1 isn't good enough for me. So, long story short, I lasted there for about 4 months before I got this job up here, and we moved up to Portland. By the way, I get pretty long-winded on my stories, just so you know.
That's fine. I'm not typically a great talker. There's a reason why I write, but I just feel that no matter what my limitations are, it's become time to speak out on these issues. The destruction of the Bill of Rights that you see taking place before your eyes. That's why I went to these Facebook Lives. And I also limited my my interaction on my own page, under anonymity. I felt it was important to put a name and a face to everything, because unlike some of the other issues that had taken place in the past, where you could split differences and say it's just politics, there's something more. There's a lot more going on with this. Okay, now you have people that would be perfectly content with seeing you either fined, incarcerated, and in some cases even killed for not putting on a mask, for not abiding by what authority is telling you to do. Okay. And, just having a blind allegiance, to authority based upon fear, nothing more than fear. So I think that this time it's not like, I always used to say, it's not worth jeopardizing friendships over politics. This is more than politics. So, and it's caused me to examine, okay, Facebook rant in of itself is a dime a dozen and it's low value. Let's try and see if we can do something more substantive. Okay. And, you tend to posture a little bit more behind a keyboard as well. Okay. Because you're doing it for impact, but now you could, take the time, they could see the humanity behind you, and you could take the time to, explain your point of views and how you're arriving at them. So I
Yeah.
mean, there is some merit to doing it this way. It's just that it's probably not the best platform for me, but really I don't care at this point. I just want to
Yeah.
I want to be productive if I'm going to do this. I want to feel like it's doing something substantive that I could at least put out there into the ether, you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you with the posturing stuff too, because I mean, I'm just as guilty. I don't know how.
Well, you're
You
trying to
know.
make an impact, okay? You're
Well,
trying to
well,
get attention, and sometimes I do go too far. I say you a lot because also it's meant for you don't write in the we for the most part if you want it to get somebody's attention. Okay, you have to say you have to direct it at the person, and I realize that I'm putting myself at odds with the person I'm trying to communicate with, and after a while that you're going to bring in. I've had people write me, people that would never comment on my posts, write me in private and say, that was what you're writing is very well reasoned and it's powerful, okay, and but you're only going to attract a limited amount of people to your message. And after a while, people are just going, oh, he's ranting about the cops again. Oh, he's ranting about war. They just start tuning you out.
yeah. Yeah. And for the posturing comment you made, I haven't thought about it too much, but I think my posts, like what I write in the actual post, I definitely posture and I definitely try to stir the pot.
Polarize. You want to polarize, okay?
I want my intent is to get people's attention and get them worked up, and but ultimately get them to think about why they feel so strongly about one thing or another. But the posturing stuff, where I try to back away and take a more reasonable, even keel approach, is in the comments, man. But some of the comments are just like outrageous. It's like I find myself holding back on doing the tit for tat, name calling and things like that, because once the name call, once you see somebody saying start calling you. I've had people that I've been friends with forever, like I am, and me, like on the side, asking me like, what the hell happened to me? Am I crazy?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and telling me everybody else thinks I'm crazy. I'm like, okay, man, that's fine. But once you're in the comments and people start to name calling and stuff, it's like, I have to stop myself and catch myself from like returning fire, because that's the ultimate waste of time. I'm not there.
It is a waste of time, and if you notice, okay, although they'll never admit it, it is their default mode of the way they communicate in their posts and their statuses. Okay, everything is ad hominem and appeal to authority. Yeah. Those are the two big things that they look to, rather than debate the merits of the topic. Okay, and it's like what you write about Fauci. Okay, it's like Fauci is the symbol of science. Mm-hmm. Everything that emanates from him, regardless of whether the studies contradict it or not, it's the symbol of science. It's all the wisdom of science comprised in his personality, and that's all they care about. Okay, and like I've said many times, and I think the message is getting lost. I could give two shits whether somebody wears a mask or not. If you feel that that's the best way to navigate these problems, put on a mask. Okay, it's just as bad for me to say don't wear a mask, okay, as it is for you to want to see me, putting behind bars for not wearing one.
Right.
Okay, but the problem is that you're not doing it because of a strong-rooted belief in anything. You're doing it because somebody on television told you to do it.
Some authority said to do it, therefore.
Yeah. And you'll never question for how long. You ask somebody how long that we're supposed to do this. Okay. They'll say, well, until a vaccine happens. Well, you know what? When a vaccine comes, they're still going to make you wear masks.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you still going to do it then? they don't have an end game. You ask
Right.
these people, they do not have an end game. They haven't thought about that. They're just simply going to follow, which
Yeah.
is going to lead into this. I mean, it's all connected. Okay, the idea of the worship of the troops and the police, it's all rooted in these principles.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the the average TV and media consumer, they're oblivious to like just these tiny and then sometimes humongous narrative changes that happen on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Like now you just can't turn on the TV without I'm not a big TV watcher, but I don't even have cable, but I turn the TV on in the morning. I'm having my coffee, checking my emails, whatever, and I listen to shit. But every time I look at the screen, I see that Rona ball flying across the screen, or it's somewhere on the screen. There's the word coronavirus, and the spiked sphere is like constantly floating across the screen every 5 minutes, and just that in and of itself is like got
That
people.
imagery has a purpose.
Yeah,
All of
yeah,
it has
yeah,
a purpose.
yeah.
It's
Did you?
it's
I don't.
never.
Did you happen to see that post I just put up before about? I think the title was something about the HCQ and the morality of science or something. But they talk about how
Take a look for it
from
right
day
now.
one it was just completely politicized. Especially after Trump mentioned using it, and it dives into like the reasoning why certain doctors and scientists don't take the everything's got to be randomized controlled trials at the beginning, because taking that approach, you got to tell somebody, hey, you might get a placebo, we might just let you die, but
Well,
it's for science.
here's the thing with HCQ. They're right. They didn't have the big randomized control trial that's needed, that you normally need with a medication. Okay, but the doctor that developed the protocol, he did it based upon the 2005 study that was peer reviewed about SARS-CoV-1 and the effectiveness of hydroxychloroquine use in that particular study. Okay, so he surmised quite logically that maybe we could derive the same benefit with this version of coronavirus. Okay, and then introduced the AZT and the zinc to open the cell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, within the protocol. So science is not just one reference point. It's not a bunch of experts getting into a room and doing double-blind placebo control studies. Okay, all of it needs to be taken together. Okay, and the real-world evidence is just as compelling as a study done in a laboratory, in vitro, with human subjects, animal subjects, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you need to take the mass of the data together. Okay, and when you're in the middle of a pandemic, okay, and there's not a hell of a lot of therapeutics out there, really, what is lost by trying something, especially if it does have somewhat of a track record of being effective?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the thing that bothers me is not the skepticism about hydroxychloroquine being effective in and of itself. What bothers me is the fact that this is a drug that's been used since the 1940s. Okay, lupus patients and people that have rheumatoid arthritis use it every day, and then they're talking about the safety. And as Jack Spirko pointed out, all these studies, now there might be some out there that do follow the protocol. I don't know. Okay, but I haven't seen one yet. They're not following the protocol. They're giving you toxic doses of hydroxychloroquine in these studies. Okay,
So what's your quote?
all right. It's something I posted a couple of weeks ago. All right. If ye love wealth better then liberty, the tranquility of servitude, then the animating contest of freedom, go from us in peace. We ask not your counsel of arms. Crouch down and lick the hand which feeds you. May your chains sit lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that ye were our countrymen. So my feelings are that his words are at the heart of the contradiction which afflicts Americans' understanding about freedom. Okay? To Sam Adams, freedom was to be found in the state of nature. Okay? No man gave it to you. No man could take it away from you unless you let them. And the thing that everybody has forgotten, okay, it seems that we hit a imaginary reset button in our imagination, okay, that this country was conceived in defiance, okay? It was not conceived through blind obedience, okay? And it wasn't defiance for defiance sake, okay? It wasn't a rejection of natural authority. There was always a recognition, even when you see when the founders wrote the Constitution, okay, they believed in a natural, for lack of a better term, aristocracy, okay? That's why the founders never put this huge emphasis on the right to vote. But it was a defiance against anyone that sought to limit life, liberty, and property. All three are connected. All three are needed to sustain each other. So what's happened now is we've ceded that intellectual premise. I think the Constitution ceded that intellectual premise. I believe the Constitution was a bloodless coup against the more preferable Articles of Confederation. Okay? We ceded that intellectual terrain, that rights proceed from nature and our creator, and they come from now the fictitious third party that we like to refer to as the state. Okay? And like I said today, this authority we've automatically, magically bestowed upon them in our heads, powers that are granted to nobody else in their private lives, in any moral undertaking. Okay? State agents do not have moral accountability that the individual has. Okay? If I rob somebody, if I tell somebody, well, it might be nice for you to contribute a third of your salary to poverty programs, and then I hold them at gunpoint and say, well, I'm going to take it anyway. That's immoral. For the state, though, there's no moral contradiction with that. Okay. For a collective, there's never a moral contradiction. Okay. And so we've granted them powers and privileges. You know, we overthrew tyranny and monarchy, and we created a new set of monarchs. Okay, a new control mechanism.
Yeah.
Our goodness and our obedience right now is characterized by how grateful we are to the ruling class. Okay, and you see it. You see it every Memorial Day. You see it every 4th of July.
Every
it's not about
troop worship season.
Yeah, it's not about those that took up arms against authority, okay, and destroyed the British East India's tea company's tea at the Boston Harbor. Okay, it's become about troops standing at attention with flags, cops singing the fucking national anthem. Okay. That's what gets celebrated. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what ultimately now gets worshipped, and it's transformed us from the people that rejected tyrants, okay, rejected the King of England, rejected monarchy, and turned us into a nation of bootlickers, to a uniform class of people. And that's
Yeah.
where I'd like to pick it off, okay? Because I was once of this mindset, and you've expressed the fact that you were of this mindset at one time. So maybe you can give a breakdown of how you went. You know, I think it's all connected. I think if you my transition from troop idolater, okay, the armed forces idolater, happened much earlier than with the police. The police was the last vestige that I needed to overcome, okay, from escaping this bootlicking mentality, okay. And I'm going to be perfectly frank. You helped with some of that with some of your posts, even though at first I said, what the fuck is this guy doing? Okay. So I want, can you recount your transition?
Yeah. So again, keep me honest here and in check with the time, because it's a long ass story. But yeah. So I'll start with the most recent, then I'll go kind of back to like who I used to be. But more recently, just with the police accountability, let's just start there. This is a very, very, obviously broad topic. If we just talk about how you and I individually, came to, think the way we think, and, opine the way we do, and talk about the things we talk about. But just the police accountability. I remember being on, I never used Facebook to, be pro cop, but I never thought like there's anything wrong with cops either. And I was, hey, that's a few bad apples, right? But one day I was, this is probably about 10 years ago now. I was sitting on scrolling through my Facebook timeline, and I ran across that the police group, and it was like, probably some, real dramatic or clickbaitish headline about, there are no good cops or something like that. And I just remember reading the headline and going, these fucking people are crazy, and then clicking on it and then reading through it. And I don't even remember who the author was or anything, but just something I read there just, kind of made me think like, yeah, this doesn't sound unreasonable. Like if you just start thinking about it, like these guys have pretty much a license to go out and do whatever they want to anybody they want at any time.
Monopoly on violence.
Yeah, and it's basically their word against anybody else's word.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first trigger. And I remember what really made me think I was onto something, and wrong and historically in my thinking, was the reaction I was getting from my friends, from back in Jersey, in West Orange, because there's no shortage of cops that we went to, kids that we went to school with that became cops, and just the pushback and like the disgust I got from them, like in instant messages and stuff like that, because I started posting these things. And I remember one time I posted something about, and this is like way under like what we know now about how many people the police kill every year, but it was like some post about police kill 1,000 people, 1,000 Americans a year.
Yeah.
And I immediately got an IM from somebody we went to high school with, whose dad, his whole family is in the was in the policing business. Reached out to me and basically said, are you fucking crazy? They don't kill more than X amount of people, and they're all justified because they're all breaking the law. They were all resisting or whatever. And that as soon as I heard that, it made me just go, all right, well, let me go look further and see what else I can learn, and see if this changes my position at all. And nothing I've read or looked into or heard or observed since then in 10 years has made me reflect back and go, maybe I was wrong. I mean, there's nuanced cases where you know, you see a video or you read a story and you form your opinion, and then, you know, more stuff comes to light, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm not talking about the, you know, the media dragging, you know, every kid that gets killed, you know, through the mud with their criminal history, if there is one or not, and defending, well, he did this in the past, so therefore he deserved to get killed. He should have obeyed. But, you know, just big picture, you know, more broadly, you can't find anything, if you're a rational thinking person, that, you know, make you go, yeah, no, this is just sensationalizing stuff, and these are just anti-cop people. It's like, you know, there's, I don't know. I'm trying to find the word to articulate it, but, or the words, but, you know, it's just quickly got to like realizing like what a propaganda machine these police unions are, and how they protect, you know, how they protect the status quo, so to speak, and how these they you know, influence you know, the laws, and, you know, the politicians, and the, you know, the courts and the juries and the judges, and the DAs, how they're in bed with the cops. You know, it's all one team. You know, it's not like, you know, the judge is there and the DA is there to, you know, make sure justice is served. It's, you know, it's a specific agenda. You know, anyway. See, I'm getting off track again, but yeah, Facebook, fine. Police to police. That's what got me what started on the whole, like, you know, what's wrong with the, you know, the police and the criminal justice system in the United States, and the world for that matter. But specifically here,
of all the negatives that you can associate with social media, I think, and technology, okay, I think one of the most powerful instruments, okay, to bring light to this topic was the ability of people to pull out their cell phone and film a police interaction at a moment's notice, okay? Because all the behaviors, everything that was buried in this subculture was always there below the surface. You'd hear people talk about it and share stories, but you got to see firsthand, okay, the way these guys approached their quote unquote work every day. All right. And the mere fact, okay, you know, everybody said, well, and I've heard the bad apple theory my entire life. Okay. There's always a few bad apples. But when you see enough stories in your news feed, when you see enough people filming these interactions, you're left with the fact that this is not just a bunch of bad apples. It's a subculture that you're dealing with. Okay. And then I layered into it my beliefs on taxation and the coercive force of the state behind that. Okay. And you're being robbed at gunpoint by the state to pay for this quote unquote privilege. Okay. And then you peel back the layers of the onion more, and how little of these interactions really apply to your safety and well-being. And it's just meant to prop up the ruling class, okay, and use the police as revenue collection agents for the state, okay? And not all these encounters, but in a great number of them, okay, these things were rooted in the routine traffic stop, okay? There's a policy within police departments that's called building a stop, okay? Yeah. And it's one of the most heinous types of protocols that you could think of, because it's basically allowing them to go on a fishing expedition. And most citizens, they don't know their rights, okay? When a cop pulls them over, and there's some wisdom in it. I'm not going to say that there isn't, because a policeman basically owns you when you're out on the road, okay? They just want to give over everything to the cops, okay? And a cop will ask you a question with a clear intent. That intent is to ensnare you, to entrap you, for you to profess your own guilt in a certain set of things. And then they use that busted taillight, okay, to see if they could dig up more dirt on you. Okay. And if a cop doesn't like you, that busted taillight can go to, I smell marijuana. I smell, whatever. Okay. And that's at the heart of the violent culture that surrounds policing. Okay. And the police accountability movement shed light. See, there's two. Police accountability for you and I means something else. Okay, it means something completely different than it means the establishment. Police accountability, that term has been around a long time. Okay, and it's usually done with the idea of reform. Okay, the idea that cops just need to change their way they conduct their stops. As long as the cop is being polite, it's okay for him to shake you down for coins for the state. Okay, they want to put a kinder face on the civilian interaction.
Right.
Okay, that's what police accountability means, and it's review boards and everything sanctioned through the prism of the state itself, where no real accountability, no real reform is going to take place within that context. Okay, because it's like the fox guarding the proverbial hen house.
Right.
So to me, real police accountability, maybe it goes back sooner, was the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers were the first police accountability advocates, following the police around with armed, in Northern California, the streets of Oakland, and that became too dangerous for the ruling class, and that brought about the whole intervention by the federal government, COINTELPRO, which sought to defang it. Actually, Hoover said one of the most dangerous things the Panthers did, was start a free breakfast program. That was the most dangerous because it gave people, it brought people into the fold.
Right.
And the whole concept of holding authority accountable was so dangerous that they needed to do a sting, basically, for lack of a better term, a government conspiracy operation to suppress the movement. But technology, what they were able to suppress with the Panthers, technology was able to unleash once again by recording the cop, and posting it on social media, so the videos went viral. Anyway.
Hey, I'm curious. So, in the household you grew up in, what was your? No, I'll ask about parents, but in my case, it was it was my dad, and he influenced my mom.
Yeah.
And it kind of her perspective on things. But what was your? I'll just touch really briefly on kind of my dad's mentality. My dad was a fireman in East Orange for 30 some odd years. He retired as a captain down there.
Yeah.
But he got wrapped up like right in the heat of all the affirmative action stuff. He got passed over for promotion, way too many times, because of affirmative action, and he was on the FMBA union. He was a VP or something like that. He was always like going down to court and having court cases and battling all this stuff in federal court, and he was really opinionated on people of color, and not in the way I'm proud to be reminded of or talk about. I think he
took a legitimate topic and then just let it color his whole
belief.
Because I think he was right to oppose that.
Yeah.
And oppose that whole system of government organized discrimination. That's really what it was.
But
government backed discrimination. I don't disagree with him on that, but
I'm just talking about how his the era in which he became a man and got his first job and started a family was right at the end of the 60s when a lot of the riots were happening. the Black Panthers and
Yep.
the Black Liberation Army, et cetera, et cetera. So I grew up in that mentality in a household, and so let me ask you, do you remember what you wrote in our Lincoln yearbook on my picture?
No.
This will give you an indication of, what I was like and what my thought process was. Because I was a kid, I didn't know any better. I just, I was learning from my, my role models, right?
Yeah.
And when I moved up here from Oregon to Oregon from New Mexico, I threw all this shit out. I threw my high school yearbook out. I threw that Lincoln thing out. I threw out all my letters, my varsity letters, and everything my mom saved from when I was, in preschool, and all my artwork and stuff. Just because,
Yeah.
shit sat in boxes for 30 years. I never looked at it.
Yeah.
But you wrote something like, "Dear Ken, you're a great guy." And I'm just paraphrasing here, but it was enough to on a diagonal cover my my face or your face. What do we do? Were you write on your picture or did you write on my picture? Like how did the yearbook thing go? You would write.
To tell you the truth, I forgot. It was be right on would write on each other's picture. That's what we did.
Yeah. So you wrote. No, we'd write on our own pictures in the other person's book.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
because
what the reason why I said that was I made the mistake. I wrote on his picture. I ruined his fucking yearbook.
I'm sure everybody's done that at least once. Yeah.
His yearbook. I'm surprised we're still friends to this day.
Yeah, but you wrote something like, "Dear Ken, you're a great guy. Hope we remain friends. Yada yada yada. Don't worry, there's not that many black guys in the NBA." And I'm trying to remember back, like why would he have wrote that? Like, was it that obvious? And I keep going back thinking like I was probably saying, I'm a tall guy. I was probably 6 foot something, and
we used to play basketball together at the park.
That's
the thing I remember. Maybe you said something about the NBA. I
was probably like, I'm not a black guy. I'm never going to make it to the NBA or so. I don't know what I said, but it was probably something stupid, but it was probably more innocent and just driven by like the environment I grew up in. But before I moved up here, I remember reading through that, going, man, it's like so many things have changed from my opinion. Like when I was a kid and the household I was in, it wasn't like this toxic household. It was just like my dad was a product of the times he was in and trying to support his family and stuff. But I think back and go, whatever it was, I can't put my finger on it. Whatever it was, it changed kind of my opinion and made me always like kind of revisit my beliefs and my position on things. At some point over the last 10, 15 years, I was consciously starting to do that. But even before that, I went to the Air Force right out of high school, and it took me about 6 months to go, well, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. This is ridiculous. Like all this marching and order following and this, that, and the other. And I had like the best job you could have. I was doing in-flight refueling in these tankers, flying in the air, giving refueling planes in the air. I had the easiest job. And I was just like, I can't fucking do this for the rest of my life. It's just ridiculous. Like, it was in the heat of the Cold War, and probably 10 years before the Cold War was going to come to an end, and that's the first point in my life I remember questioning kind of why things are the way they are, and
the Matrix.
And I just remember like at one point in my life I remember telling people, hey, I was a big like, hey, we drop a bomb somewhere, it kills the one bad guy and other people get hurt. Hey, so be it. We got to protect ourselves, Like that was my mentality at one point or another. And it just never, it just never sat right. The more and more I talked about it, the more and more, it just didn't make sense. And long story short, unconsciously I was thinking like that, I think, right out of high school when I was in the Air Force, but more of the last 10, 15 years, 10, 12 years, I've really been conscious and continually always looking to, try to learn and adjust my position if it was warranted. And something that really resonated with me about, how I see the world and, the lenses I see it through was that Muhammad Ali's quote about, a person that sees the world, at 50, the same as they did when they were 20, is wasted 30 years of their life, right?
Yeah.
And that really resonated with me the first time I grew up in my household. Like, man, you didn't, we were not fans of Muhammad Ali. We were fans of Jerry Cooney and whoever the next Great White Hope was going to be on any given day. Yeah, the Great White Dope.
Yeah. No, it was a little different for me. I didn't have my grandfather was the male figure in my life. Okay. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't the classic male figure that, had all kinds of masculine pursuits. My grandfather grew up in a household full of women. Okay. And his interests were cooking, baking, cleaning, okay, maintaining his yard. That was his big manly pursuit. He took pride in his yard. Okay, swept it. When he used to come home from work, sweep the driveway, and was spotless. Mm-hmm. Okay, but to get to your point, okay, the other thing, but not having that father directly there in my life. Now, I used to see my father every once in a while. Okay, but my father had some issues. Okay, with the law and his own personal demons, and so we saw the law. My father, the way it was presented, my dad was a cautionary tale. Okay, of what happens when you go outside the system. Okay, when you defy the system. Okay, and that was kind of like embedded in me. It was not just embedded in me with my family.
Real quick, give me 10 seconds. I forgot I got something on the stove. Hold on.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead.
All right, cautionary tale.
Yeah. So he was, so, if I didn't align with the system, okay, if I was disobedient, okay, rebellious, that's where I could wind up, okay, in the same boat. So we put a great emphasis on following the rules, okay. The slave, well, we didn't see it as a slave mentality. We saw it as a way of getting ahead. Okay, but my grandparents never graduated high school. Okay, were able to afford homes. Okay, and all the basics of life on a modest income through thrift and savings and everything else. Okay, that dream was possible. Okay, right. And that was what was thrust upon me. Okay, if I just used my head and got into a good corporation or whatever, I'd be safe for the rest of my life. Always follow the law. The law is always right. So, and also colored within that is the racism that lurked beneath the surface that came from my grandfather's generation and even my mother's generation. Okay, my mother would take a more outspoken stance about those injustices within the household. My grandparents came from an era where you use pejoratives against black people, okay, right. And it was still acceptable for them to talk in that manner, okay, and in some respects, okay, I had to shed that, okay, as I was growing up, and some of that was just that did that for me. We're just daily interactions with other black people and other people, different races and nationalities and all of that. So life kind of like took care of that. So, basically I had to shed some of that same baggage that you did, but I didn't have the more dominant, patriarch role that you had to deal with in your life,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, in that respect. And as I grew up, I always was interested in philosophy, okay, politics, history, all right? And politics was like at the nexus of all of that. So when I saw the whole, the whole country going to hell in a handbasket that I thought was going with Jimmy Carter, okay, I latched onto the Reagan Revolution, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So I became the, everything, build up our national defense, peace through strength, the whole bullshit anti-communist rant. Some of it wasn't bullshit, but a lot of it was, a lot of it was contrived. Okay, I was a victim of the Cold War propaganda.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so then after the war, the Cold War had basically come to a close. Okay, guys like Pat Buchanan. Okay, we're talking about why continue these interventions, okay, these dalliances elsewhere, okay. The Iraq War, the conflict came for me with the Iraq War, and the fact that it was totally, we were fine with Iraq being the bully on the block when they invaded Iran, but all of a sudden it became a huge problem when they invaded Kuwait. And then I started questioning the whole war narrative, and then looked into libertarian thinkers who took an anti-war stance, guys like Murray Rothbard. Okay, I used to get I ordered the Rothbard Rockwell report when Rothbard was still on the masthead. I used to get that in the mail and look forward to it. Okay,
right.
And he explained how the old right was anti-war, anti-imperialist, anti-colonialist. Okay, those were the intellectual roots. Okay, and then conservatism took a turn with William F. Buckley and became we must defend the U.S. Colossus. We must build this whole, we have to be the policeman of the world type of narrative. Okay, so I quickly turned. I turned on the whole pro-troops narrative well before the police. I thought the police were still necessary, and I still bought into the whole good cop, bad cop, good apple versus bad apple analogies. And then years down the road, I had abstained from politics and discussion of these events altogether and just focused on normal everyday shit. Okay. And it was then that, I started taking notice of the whole system of injustice in this country. Okay. And in its relation to the abuses of the police. Okay. And a lot of that came through social media and what you would post. Okay. And that brought me awareness. And that was the final piece of the puzzle. Okay. When I saw it before my face, I didn't have to look for it. Okay. It wasn't just you. It's just, there was stories now abounding everywhere, YouTube, everywhere. Okay. I didn't have to even look for this shit. Okay. It just came to me. Then that was then when the light turned on and said, this is a very real problem. Okay. And in my own assessment of the race relations in this country, okay, I would dismiss the black man's claim about being oppressed by the police and authority. Okay. To a certain extent, I still reject the notion, while there are no good cops, like we can agree that there are no good cops, but not all cops are racist. Okay. I think that's a misnomer too, but it really doesn't make a difference now, does it? No. Because when the system effectively is impacting it in a disproportionate way against your race, it may as well be overtly racist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that is all even tied into the whole narrative with wars. Okay. The way we've dehumanized populations overseas. Okay. We dehumanize them on the streets too, because we associate anybody that's at the end of a police baton with a miscreant and less than human. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we've automatically have this built-in bias that if a policeman is administering violence, okay, it's got to be just. Okay. And so in this respect, black men in particular, who have been disproportionately impacted by the system, have a huge grievance with the criminal justice system, from the courts, the lawmakers, the courts, and down to the police. Okay? Because the police, whether they're racist or not, they've been told to sit on these poor neighborhoods and be this occupying presence. The 90s, the 80s and the 90s with the carjack, Newark was the carjacking capital of the world when I was growing up. That whole movement to militarize the police that began to take shape, okay, began to sit on blacks, and it wasn't for the violent crime. It was for non-violent incidences, okay?
Yeah.
Most of these were for non-violence, okay? And for crimes that did no harm to anybody else. They might be doing harm to themselves, but they weren't doing harm to anybody else.
They're victimless.
They were
victimless crimes.
Yes. And I noticed that blacks going to jail in disproportionate numbers. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I think while great strides were made in every other area of life with black people, and the very fact that, intermarriage has in relationships, okay, has taken the steam out of that whole racial divide. Okay. We for the most part, we are getting along with each other. Okay. Mm-hmm. But this was the one chief grievance. Let's face facts. A black man can't drive through a suburb looking a certain way, dressed a certain way, without the cops, pulling him over.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You don't belong here. What are you doing?
They do face that inherent bias within the justice system.
Yeah. It was, so what you were saying earlier about, that there are racist cops, but not every. I don't believe every cop is racist either. But the system and the laws that they enforce are inherently, a lot of them are racist.
Yes.
And anytime someone's like, oh, that's why I've been more recently been, yes, your cop is a bad cop too, and I aim that towards everybody that I know that has a friend or a relative or a son or a daughter or whatever, husband, wife that's a cop, that constantly posts those. I don't support defunding the police. I think they deserve a raise. Not all cops are bad. Yeah. No. Nobody's saying your cop that's a person is a bad person. We're saying when they put on the uniform and they go out and do their jobs, it's immoral, or immoral behavior, or it's it perpetuates injustices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's something like, you can you wrap your head around pretty quickly. But when the cop is your family member, what are you going to do? What are these people to do?
That's it's understandable that there would be that gulf, in somebody's head.
I think it goes back to the same thing we were talking about earlier about, like, making a dollar, is prioritized over, doing what's right or what's wrong, et cetera, et cetera. Like earlier about, me working at the national labs, and, you getting paid for, something that you don't think is up to the quality that you should be getting paid for.
Yeah. And maybe there are many cops that do realize the futility or the contradictions. Okay. But for practical purposes, they want to hang on, okay, to that whatever it is, 25 and out, and collect that pension, or whatever, and that's 75 to 80% of salary. That's not chicken feed, okay. Yeah. So there comes a point, even when they realize it, that they're in too deep, okay. They're in too deep, and then they start the rationalizations, and their families rationalize it for them too. And we were all raised to rationalize the violence of policing, the fact that most of their activities are for victimless crimes and shaking down people so that they can prop up the ruling class, collect revenues.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. I think you put it perfectly one time with one of your comments you made with a post that I had, was, we're not talking about, we're talking about, we're not talking about discrimination. People want to. There was a post recently that was so idiotic. It was actually acclaimed by the union, police union of New York, a union member, that blue racism. There's an epidemic of blue racism. The cops are not a demographic. They're not an ethnic group. They're a subculture we create with our tax dollars. The tax dollars that are stolen from us. Okay, you can't equate the two, but that's the way they want to. They want to frame everything. Okay, it's a built-in bias that we're feeding against the police. No, the very nature. Okay, the way that they're rated on their jobs, they're not rated upon you didn't put it in these words, but they're not rated upon the number of kittens they rescue from trees or whatever. Okay, that's not the way they're evaluated. They're evaluated and promoted based upon the revenues that they've helped to generate for the state.
Yeah.
The aggressiveness that they've taken in their patrol jobs on the road. Okay, that's the way they advance through the system. Okay, and that's what they need to come to grips with. That so many of their roles, okay, serve non-protective functions. Okay, and the fact that we have anywhere from 400 to 800,000 kids go missing. Okay, and those cases go unresolved. Okay, you talk about 60% of assaults going unresolved, 40% of murders. Okay, and what are cops doing? They're harassing innocent citizens for nickels on the road. Okay, not if they were performing their protective functions as people think they are, there would not be people taking to the streets in the middle of a pandemic to tell them what a shitty job they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think if that doesn't wake people up, okay, the people that are afraid people that were a few weeks before the George Floyd uprising were afraid for their lives, said, fuck it, we're going to go into the streets, okay, and risk getting sick because, many black people believe that narrative, and they've also suffered. They not only believe it, they've suffered disproportionately from the effects of coronavirus. Okay, in terms of their population, the Black and Latino communities in the major cities. Okay, they said, screw it. I don't care if I get sick. I'm going to go out and go police it. And then everything went to shit. Right after the first few days, okay, everything went to shit. It became about Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben, okay, statues, all the symbolism, okay, and everything. It became a counterinsurgency. That's the way I would frame it. There was a counterinsurgency by the feds that really upended the movement, okay?
Yeah.
And it's gotten away from the substantive topic of abolish the police, then to defund the police, and then turned it into the cultural Marxism, the cultural conflict that the Black Lives Matter leaders crave, the Maoist type behavior, where there needs to be constant conflict. Okay, so it went into race war. It morphed into race war.
Yeah.
Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer is the strategy of the ruling class. We can get into that another time, but
it's funny the point you were making about you didn't say the rape kits backlog, but you mentioned the murder rate, crime solving solving crime rates with regards to murder and some of the other more heinous crimes and crimes that assault and things like that, property theft. I live in a condo here in Portland, and I go to the HOA meetings, and I happen to be on the security committee now, which is pretty much a toothless committee like most other committees. But anytime something happens here, and we got a big homeless, it's probably no bigger than anywhere else in the country, but the laws here in Portland, are set up to protects the vulnerable homeless folks, and they're allowed to camp anywhere for a night, et cetera, et cetera. It's all that shit's gone out the window more recently. That they got there's tent cities everywhere, but these guys are they want to get into your building constantly, right? and they do. They piggyback in when cars come through the gate. You know, we have an underground parking. People scan your little fob, it opens up the gate, and people drive through and say, hey, you guys got to wait for the gate to close because these guys will come in right behind you and start breaking into cars and breaking into storage units, et cetera, et cetera. And every time like something that we have an incident, it's like, oh, did anybody call the police? And I'm always like, what are the police going to do? Well, we'll give them a description. I'm like, you call the police all you want. Don't involve me in calling the police. You call the police. The police aren't in the business of, solving these crimes. The police don't even want to come out and talk to you about your car being broken into, what property was stolen, if somebody was assaulted. That's not the business they're in. If they're not making money off of it, they don't care about doing it. Like, they want to be out there ticketing people, rolling through stop signs, jaywalking, whatever, especially if you're a person of color. They're not in the business of protecting and serving. I don't care how many times you hear it, how many times you say it. That's not what they do. That's not their mission. Their mission is to generate revenue, collect revenue, and keep people under control.
I believe the whole history of that protect and serve comment, and that was became the motto of the Los Angeles Police Department, was to combat the perceptions that were being that were out there about them already. Okay, yeah. So they put these mottos on their car, on the car, and throughout the department to protect and to serve. It was a great piece of propaganda, and to mask the underlying activities that keep the police going. Okay, yeah, that keep them at a third of budget in these cities. Well, the reason why they're a third of budget is they're going to make money for the cities, and that's why the whole defund movement of the police, when done from the leftist perspective, I mean, it's a sham. Okay, you can reconfigure all that money and that dollars, but at some point, if you believe in positive rights, okay, you and I, we believe rights in a negative sense. Okay, do no harm, take no shit. Take no shit. That's basically right. The NAP encapsulated. Okay?
No victim, no crime. Do no harm.
No victim, no crime. Okay. So do no harm, take no shit. Okay. We believe in rights in a negative sense. Okay. The lefties out there, and I don't want to just finger the lefties. Okay. But they believe in rights in a positive sense. Okay. That we have a right to health care. Well, how? And so there's the underlying conflict. Okay. How do you enforce the Green New Deal? Okay. All your fucking fantasy projects without it, you're writing new laws, piling laws on top of laws, national mask mandates and all that other shit, okay, without a vigorous police presence. Okay, it's impossible. Okay, and it's the one reason why this message had to be diverted and make this movement something so odious to the average American's nostrils, okay, that we don't even entertain the idea now of defunding police or whatever. One person I know, he posted, actually a few people, they posted this meme, and it's so asinine. It was, remember what it was like during the early part of this pandemic when you couldn't find toilet paper? Imagine now not being able to find something to that. Imagine not being able to find a police officer. Well, I wanted to write and say, you just compared the police with something, you wipe the bottom of your ass with. Okay, so you kind of like defeated your own purpose. But they want you to be, they want the public to be afraid that these cops are going to retire in droves. I think it was like close to 900 retirements on NYPD. No, people don't realize how big NYPD is.
Yeah.
40,000, or close to 40,000 people strong. That's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
It's a drop in the bucket. Yeah. Okay. And the whole idea of what, Michael Mira, the union head in New York State, police union head, big bloviating fat guy. 375 million encounters. 375 million encounters. mostly positive reviews, and they're saying, okay, 1,000 deaths a year. It's chicken feed compared to nobody bothers to examine the underlying premise. Do we need 375 million encounters with the police when nobody desires fucking one?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. You're the problem is that you and I are up against a mindset, years and decades of conditioning. So while we get frustrated, you just need to look at how long your mental metamorphosis took. And that's what we're dealing with when we talk about these subjects, in our social media feeds and everywhere else. Okay. And, I think I've been able to make my case in these posts based upon logic and reason, but logic and reason never trump emotion. Okay. It's never going to trump somebody's emotional connection that they have with family members. Okay.
Beliefs.
Family ties. Okay. And the emotional connection that the media and the cultural institutions portray of the cop, Officer Krupke on the beat and everything. The cop was always the good guy. Okay. I remember the 70s and 80s TV shows. Okay. We were even trained to love the road cop, the cop that took the shortcuts. In the movies, the cop that took the shortcuts were trying to protect the public. You know what I'm saying? That's the way it was always portrayed. They're trying. Those were the good guys. They got away from. They tried to separate themselves from all the red tape.
Red tape and bureaucracy. They just get it done.
Yeah, they got it done. Steven Seagal and all that other bullshit.
Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood. Yeah.
Oh, Hollywood shit.
Yeah. So everything that we see before us in terms of media and within all of our institutions, okay, is meant to prop up this idea of obedience, bootlicking, and servitude to the police, the troops, and any type of authority. And now you've really seen it the latter part of the 20th century with science as well. And it's no longer a worship of science. It's become a religion. It's become scientism. Okay. And the love of these, Fauci, nobody could fucking pick him out of a police lineup a few weeks ago. Okay. Yep. Now Fauci's America's physician.
Yeah. He's a celebrity now.
He's a celebrity. And he's become the emblem of science. Okay. The figurehead for everything scientific. Okay. And if you question him, it's because you really don't understand the science that he understands, and even if there's a contradiction, if you point out a contradiction, there's a reason for it that's so scientific and beyond the scope of your intellect that you can never possibly understand why he said that.
Yeah.
So Fauci and public officials and those that are they claim are trying to keep us safe, they will always win every friggin' debate. Mm-hmm. It becomes a circular argument. I've even pointed out the points where we go from, okay, we know what this, everybody will talk about, well, we know what this virus does. We know how it behaves in XYZ case. Okay, that's the reason why we have to have lockdowns and wear masks and social distance. And then the same argument is used about the virus, okay, to promote the same tyrannical policies. It's what we don't know. There's so much we don't know. So it's an argument that they never lose. Okay? They never lose. Anyway. I diverged a little bit at the end over there.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's funny about what put the news on here in Portland. And, there's hundreds of people, on any given night. They've been, protesting and rioting down here for 90 some odd days now. It's like literally three blocks to the east and 3 blocks north from where I live. And every day you turn on the news in the morning and it's like, the video from the night before, and they show, a bunch of people going crazy in the streets, basically, like lighting dumpster fires and, throwing shit. And the first thing out of the talking head mouth is some, you could count them on one hand number of officers injured. You know, as they're shooting tear gas and rubber bullets, you know, some guy took a flashbang, you know, grenade directly, you know, in the forehead and went down for the count. You know, ended up in ICU. But like the first thing they mention is how many officers were injured.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's right where I just go, I can't fucking watch this anymore. Like,
but I kind of like use that. I kind of like use that as jiu-jitsu against them. They'll talk about how important officers are. Okay, officer life. You believe an officer's life is more important than the average citizen's life. Okay, so you know many people will say if you kill a cop, it's like an attack against all of us. So that person deserves the death penalty. You know, the hard. Trump's hardcore red state supporter. That's what he. Okay, so if they're more important to us, shouldn't an abuse by the same authority figure be taken more seriously and they be held more accountable?
Yeah.
Okay, then that's when the crickets.
Yep. Yeah.
Some are able to acknowledge the contradiction, but others it's just, you know, no. Move on to the next topic.
Yeah, and the other thing is they've been using this trickery here in Portland because they defunded this police group, the gun violence task force, about I don't know a month and a half ago, and I don't know. It was like I think it was single digit, you know, members of this gun violence reduction task force. And the examples they gave of how these guys or these cops were, you know, positively impacting and reducing gun violence was, you know, there was never an example of, you know, Officer X went out, engaged with, you know, perp number one and prevented a shooting. It's always like, well, some guy got shot. This anti-gun violence group showed up and they engaged with the community. Okay. You know, and then the next thing out of their mouth is, you know, because they can't do that now, gun violence is going up. You know, it's always this like, you know, misdirection or like misrepresentation of what they do, like as if these cops magically reduce gun violence by engaging with the community after the fact of the gun violence.
Yeah.
You know, which right off the bat makes me go, these fucking guys aren't doing anything to reduce gun violence. But now the gun violence has gone up, you know, 1,000% in the last, you know, month and a half, 2 months.
They haven't done anything to reduce the casualty that's been felt by the local businesses there, you know, in terms of the looting, destruction of property either. All their encounters have been centered around crowd control and directed at the protest itself, because that's where the ruling class wants the focus to be. It doesn't give two shits about private business owner. Maybe they'll care about Chase Manhattan Bank getting raided or something like that. But you know, your little fucking shoe shop on the corner over there, or the cobbler, they could give two shits.